Hi there, this is Popo, I hope you're fine. Personally, I'm dead sick, but that's okay. Welcome back to the Matches Neura Tournament, Round 2, and today we're going to review the two games played between Yosh and MadTanker. So let's get started. Okay, so for the first game, Yosh gets the white pieces with the Yetis faction, and MadTanker gets the black pieces with the Tikis faction. Actually, the Yetis faction allows you to capture multiple pieces in one turn, so you can be up ahead in terms of material and also go for ugly tactics. On the other hand, the Tikis faction allows your pieces to change almost every turn their moveset, so they became very unpredictable, so this is pretty hard to try to get for a solid plan against the Tikis, so you have to be careful here. So the game starts with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5, Tusk to c3, Moai to e7, and you see that as long as this Moai moved, the sprite changed, because every time you moved the Moai, it would switch between a knight and a king. So we have Tusk to f3, and now pawn to d6, and we have a surprising move here on move 4, which is Tusk to d5. This might be a little too much aggressive, because you want to go for a trade, but you don't want to trade too early with the Yetis, because activity is the key, and you see that this piece is very important. Instead, you could have played pawn to d4, for example, and after, let's say, captures, okay, the Tikis can decide to strike back, and then you calmly play, I don't know, this piece here, or you decide to retreat here, and the idea with this kind of stuff is that you're going to provoke some trades with your pieces, and your opponent can't really take here. For example, if we have this kind of move, you can't really take, because as you take, I'm going to take it, and that would also take the trim brother of this piece. This is the very cool ability of the sage here. So don't trade immediately. Tusk to d5 is anyway played, and now we have Moai to c6, so now this is a king, this is attacking the Tusk, asking what do you do? And now the Tusk takes on e7, and after Totem takes, you see that White spent a lot of moves to develop the Tusk and exchange it. In return, they have lost a lot of tempis, so this is almost they have played 2 moves. But the Tikis seems to have to play 4 world moves here. So yeah, the Yetis are a little down in terms of development. We have pawn to d3, Moai to b5. The idea here in this move is to go on this very cool d4 square, excuse me, but you can play pawn to c3, and this is a way to defend the square. Instead, we have rook to e3, which also works, I mean. We have a short castle, and now Tusk to g5. Again, Yosh being very aggressive in this game. I guess you should take your time, develop your roots, and try to get something better. But we have Tusk to g5, which is played. Okay, this is perfectly understandable. Here in this position, the Tikis, excuse me, should trade here. Why? Because the less twin brother pieces you have, the more activity and the less fear you would have to play your pieces to get into the field's territory, because the sage wouldn't work on them. So instead, in this position, we have Moai to d4, so threatening the brute, and I guess the idea is that you want to trick the brute defense, but you can just retreat here, and the game somehow continues, and maybe you can even try to get this move, develop here, try to push here, and try to develop that. This is a very good attacking plan here. But instead, we have the very bold Tusk stage h7. Man, Yosh, you're too much aggressive here in this game. And the thing is that it wants to trick the king, because if there's captured, now the sage goes here. Okay, this is not made, this is not winning, but somehow it scares the opponent, and you can try to do something. But one way to do something is just to capture here. And okay, you have first to deal with the threat, because if you think that you can capture that, remember that this is hanging. So you have first to capture here, and after that the king can capture, and after the sage goes here and goes here, it takes a little time to get your brute in the right spot. And even though the totem can still strike, you can still defend this way. I mean, you don't have enough pieces to try to checkmate. So normally you would be winning the game with the Tikis. Instead, we have immediately king takes x7, so now the sage strikes on h5, and after king goes back to g8, okay, this is your time you have to get for a very solid plan. So Yosh gets a very interesting move, which is brute to g5, and now if you decide to take, then the sage is going to retake back his piece, because he would take also the twin brother of the totem here. And now he would go for a very weird game where you're up on pawns with the Yetis, but you don't have all the activity of the world, so you have to be very careful against the very tricksted Tikis. But in the game we have Moai to c5, and at first you might not understand this move, but further analyzing it, this is a very great move. So congratulations, MadTanker, to have found this very brilliant strategy here. Now you have to get for a plan, and I guess what you should follow is to go here and then here, and try to thread the totem, and even try to get this and then for the mate. Even, okay, again, your opponent have a lot of tricks upon themselves to just cancel your plans, but this is a way of trying to get something in the way. If you think that you're too slow going here, here, and here, then you can try this, this, and this maybe. But in the game we have a long castle, and this is a loss of a move. Because now we have Moai to d6. Still not figuring out the idea you're going to see, this is very brutal. We have now pawn to g3, so finally the plan unveils, but now we have the very strong Moai to f6. Now this targets here, and if you decide, for example, to play here, now the Moai can slide it, and this is a king, so attacks both pieces. And now this is protected by this, so you're basically going to lose a piece here. So very cool strategy. So this is why in the game you have to retreat a little back here. And I mean, if you decide to go here, then the totem might get here. Only problem is if you calculate well when you're going to take it, that will gonna remove this. But as this is protected by the Moai, this is okay. But at least if you try to trick it, that doesn't work because you take that first, and this is a fork here. So seems like the Tikis would be ahead of this thing. So in the game we have brute takes f6, and after totem takes f6, now we have pawn to h4, so trying to do something, maybe pushing the pawns. But now the totem slides one square, and what's cool is that when it slides one square orthogonally, the moveset change. What's the moveset here? This is one square diagonally, but he can also play a second square diagonally up here and try to go this on this square. But not directly jumping here, it has to go on the diagonal slide, sliding. So if there is a piece in the way, for example, it can't reach this. This is not possible. So now the sage is threatened, so we have to go somewhere. So now the sage goes to f3, and now we're pawn to a5. And I can tell that I don't really understand this move, other than you want maybe to push on the king queenside against. That can be understandable. Maybe if there was better to be played. I don't know, maybe with the totem I want to play this, immediately go for the attack here, and once this moved, or this move, then you can launch the pawns and try to get something in the way. But okay, this is just arguing over some silly moves. We have pawn to a5 and now pawn to h5, so asking the totem to do something. The totem slides back to g5, and now this is check to the king, so it allows the king to run to b1. And I guess this check move is not maybe the best thing to do here in the position, even, okay, you tried against some tempies here. But now the king is on b1, it protects a little more of these pawns. Now we have pawn to a5, so that's pretty bold here because you want to open on the king's side, although all your attacking pieces, the open pieces are on the king's side, so very brutal strategy, but okay, why not? We have pawn takes f5, and of course you can't take back with the totem, but now the shrine. As a first move to play, remember that once this piece moved once, it would turn into another queen for the rest of the game. And now it decides to go to f7, enters into a chimp, which is a queen by 2, and can leap over other pieces, and can also throw some pieces around it. So now there's a double attack upon this pawn, so you have to defend it in some way, and now the very cool brute to h3 is played, and this is a very cool move. Now we have pawn to c6. Something that you might have experienced here is to play the brute to g4. Why? Because any piece in front of the brute would be captured on the next turn if you do nothing. So for example, if you decide to, I don't know, play this kind of move, then that would disappear here. So that doesn't work. Because I guess pawn to c6 was the idea of going here to try to get the exchange here. But with this, That doesn't work because you're already down some pieces. So after captures, now you will be able to strike and to do something with the game. So yeah, after this move, I don't know where you put the totem, maybe you put it here, but then now you can put the Igloo and try to get for an attack. Okay, in the game instead we have Igloo to E1, I think this is a very bad move, but why not? Mask to F6 now is played, and you see that this mask is thrown by the Chimp just under here, so very cool attack, so now we have a triple attack there. And again, one way just to counter this is just to go brute to G4, and even if you try to capture this or capture this, this is going to be vanish here, so you should be better. And after, let's say, Totem goes to H6, because this is one of the only moves that you can perform, here you can try to strike with pawn to D4, and once this is captured this way or captured this way, then one of the Igloos should launch and you get the rest of the attack. But instead, in the game, we have the very passive pawn to G4. I mean, this is protecting, but now the brute is not taking part in the game, and now the pawn advances forward with pawn to A4. Here in the game, something that you could go for is to strike with this pawn, play the brute here, try to get the... oh, excuse me, I don't have the name for it. The Igloo here, try to attack this pawn. But in the game we have a pawn to d4, which is, okay, a cool option. Now we have Totem to f4, so trying to get a better square. And now the Igloo goes to e4. So maybe wrong move order, but that somehow works. Now we have Mask to a5. And, okay, it controls a lot of square here, because remember that the mask, when it is on a dark square, it is cross also up to squares. So, very interesting. And now we have pawn captures, pawn recaptures, and pawn to b3. And why pawn to b3? This is a very bad move here, because you're weak on your pawn structure here. Even if you go for a trade, you would never let these pieces enter. And even if this happens on the board, you just push this and you're okay. Here, what you should do, I guess, is to play the brute to f1. And now you try to get this move, and of course your opponent doesn't want to trade, else you're going to get something. So threatening here, and try to reroute your sage here and try to get for the attack. But in the game we have pawn to b3, and now of course the Tikis take advantage of this, and after pawn takes b3 we have pawn takes b3, and now the way is okay for the mask to do some horrible stuff. And here MadTanker plays the best move of the position, which is Totem to c7 sliding. And you'll see that as there are weakness everywhere on dark squares, this very little Totem will be able to slide and sneak through here. That will be very interesting. Here in the game we have Igloo takes f4, I don't know what this move is for, but okay, it does the job. And after captures, now we have sage captures. So, yeah, I mean, exchanging the Igloos here is not a good move. I see that this Igloo doesn't do a lot of stuff, but if you just slide, for example, the Igloo to a4, that will be a little better, because this mech is very threatening, and although your pawn structure would be dismantled here, it takes a little time for the chimps to go in the way, and you see that all the squares are controlled by very strong pieces. So normally you will be able to do something, and even if you try to play the mask here, then you can just exchange here and he can't recapture, else you're going to lose a totem. So, okay, instead we have Totem Igloo captures, pawn captures, sage captures, and now we have the ugly Totem to c5, and now you have to be very careful because there are Maid threats everywhere. And Yosh completely fall into the trap here. I'm so sorry for him. He thought that by pushing the b4 pawn, because this is defending here, that would be a fork, and somehow it tricked the Tikis. No, of course not, because now this is made in 2, and MadTanker found it. We have first Mask to a3 with check, because this is crossable sauce, so this is attacking this, so there's only one move, it's to get the king up. And now we have the very nice finishing with Totem to c3, attacking the king, and at the same point defending through the king. So you can't take, else this is going to be captured by this. So we have a very nice checkmate pattern, and if you play the Tikis, you should know this kind of mate pattern, because that happens very often in the games. So this is the end of the first game. We're going to see the second game just now. So let's go to it. Okay, so now for the second game, MadTanker gets the white pieces with the Tengus faction, and Yosh gets the black pieces with the Mermaids faction. The Tengus faction can really well defend themselves from threats, because if you get threatened, then you can dodge the attack or even counterattack. so be careful when you attack the Tengus faction. For the Mermaids faction, they would be able to spread water across the board, and on water they can decide to teleport, swap, or even do some capture. You see this Kraken here, he can move one square around it, but also teleport to move and capture on every water square here. So be careful of this Kraken, else you're going to be soon tricked. Please note that before the beginning of the game, the Conscious made their ability work because they created 4 water squares in front of them. So that's already a good start with 9 squares out of 64 covered in water. The game starts with pawn to e4, with spine to c6 and crow to f3. We have pawn to e5, and you see that on the previous move, because the spine didn't move, they create water square on the exact location. And you're going to see for creating water squares, the mermaids are very cool for this. So we have pawn to e5 and now out to b5. The real opus is on the board, seems like. You can't play the Murphy's defense here because you play against the Tengus. So this is the oak. If this gets threatened by a pawn, he can decide to teleport on the 4 corner squares to move and capture. So for example, can capture just there. And because this queen is already range 1, it takes some time. I mean, because you play with the mermaids, that would be maybe a little faster after, let's say, I can't castle with this analysis board, so let's say I develop this, then you can simply put the Kraken here on h7, and after captures, okay, you're back in the game, but you're down 2 points of material here. So in the game, we have spine to b4, which is played. And why not? The idea is to gain even more control of water by creating water square here. Only problem is that it completely drops the pawn on e5, so it can be captured at any time. But seems like the crow to c3 is played, and the Tengus don't want to claim this pawn immediately. And I think the fact is that this is hard to defend it very well, because you have to put the spine back maybe, or even play this move which is not looking great, or even play the Maid to d6 which is not looking great. You can't obviously play that, else you're going to be checkmated, so this is not possible. So we have spine to f6, completely ignoring the pawn, and then crow captures e5. Here you have to be very careful, because let's say you decide to play, I don't know, the Maid going to c5, you see that, by the way, when the Maid moves, it creates water squares on the way, so also a good way to create water square here. If you play that, then I have the very ugly looking crow to c4, and now you have to defend this threat, and this is very hard to do, because your pieces are not well placed. And if you try to go for the very known trick here, you can't, because you play against the Tengus, so you're going to get this captured. And after the Kraken goes here, he can't even go here, excuse me, you have to push this first, and after this goes on the board, then there's this, and somehow it escapes, and you're down 6 points of material, you're completely losing the game. So in this position, we have Maid to d6, so just asking the crow to leave, and now the crow gets back on f3. But be careful, there's a threat to push here with a fork, so you have to defend it very correctly. So spine to g4 is played, try to get again a water square and avoiding these ugly threats. And after pawn to h3, now the spine gets to e5 and asking the crow, would you be kind enough to take? And the Tengus says, of course not, because I will use the special ability of the crow. What's this? If it gets threatened by a piece, the crow can land on every square surrounding this piece for a move only. So you see that this crow has a lot of activity now, because it is threatened. And the crow takes advantage of this to play crow to f5. And now this is attacking 2 spots at once, and the only move that you can play to defend this somehow is Maid to a8. Else you're going to be traded here, and double pawns are not great. But if you play that, you can run into a deadly tactic with a pawn to d4, for example, and after, let's say, the spine goes back to d6, c6, then there's out to g5. And now you have to be very careful here, because you can't push this to defend. So maybe you put some piece in the way, maybe you put the Maid in the way to defend somehow, but after, let's say, captures, then you can threat again this, and after here you have to take with the Kraken, because if you take with a pawn, then I can just play this, and this is bye-bye, game over. So after this move, you try to claim a little better the center, and then you'll be able to get a better game than your opponent here. So in this position, we have a short castle, and the tank will happily trade on d6. So after pawn captures, now the pawn strikes on d4, spine to g6, and oak to g5, attacking the Kraken. Here, where do you put the Kraken? You can decide to put here, but okay, that would slow the activity of the Mermaids. So Kraken to c7 is tried. Even this looks terrifying for me. In this position, you can try a lot of stuff. Here, a Shogun to e2 seems to be a pretty natural looking move, but instead we have pawn to f3 immediately kicking the spine, which goes to c6, and now we have pawn to f4. So very aggressively getting on the center of the board. Personally, I would not, but okay, this can be played somehow. Why? Because as there's now a lot of water square here on the board and not a big control of the board, especially by this piece which is doing absolutely nothing, the Tengus are up in terms of control of the board, so they take advantage of this. So we have conch to b8, maybe the threat is to push this, and because you see that the conch is not on the corner, here, excuse me, now this oak becomes very stupid, so this is the idea here. So we have a short castle, so maybe later he wants to push here. And now we have the conch to e8, so trying to create some pressure over this pawn. But now we have pawn to a5, so kicking the spine, which goes to h4. And now we have the deadly crow to d5, which is played. And now, what do you do? The best move for me is to put the Kraken here on f8, and now you're safe. But there's a very cool move that the Tengu can play, is Shogun to g4. Why? Because when the Shogun is attacked by a piece, it can attack this piece back and take it. So this is a direct threat to get this kind of trade. And let's say that you decide to do nothing, I don't know, I will play a random move like this, then there's capture. And after recapture, this is not protected anymore and you just take it. So that also, that also adds an attacker here against the spine, which is trapped. So you would pretty be forced to capture that. And after captures back, this spine is not doing anything of the game, so we'd be able to just trade against the pawn. And now the Tengus would be leading the game. But in this position, maybe there's a mouse slip, even Yosh that this is meant, I don't know. The Kraken used the special ability of the spine, which can swap itself with another piece into water, and the other piece is the Kraken. You see that there's a tandem on each piece. For example, in water, the spine can exchange with a Kraken, the conch can exchange with a king, and the maid can exchange with a pawn. So we have the swap here, and of course that doesn't work because that can be just taken by the oak. So after captures, now we have the crow capturing c7 attacks here at the conch, and at the same time attacks this. So the conch captures on e4, and now we have oak captures, conch captures, and the Tengus are up 8 points of material, so they're just leading the game. So we have crow to e8 attacking the d6 pawn, and this is not defending. Maid to x6 is played, we have crow takes d6. The maid decides to exchange the pawns on water, this is doing nothing for now. We have pawn to c3, again exchanging on a7, still doing nothing. And now the shogun goes to e1. And you'll see that this whole endgame would be very painful for the mermaids, as they're just experimenting threats and threats. And after a very big exchange on the e5 squares, now this is the end of the game, and slowly but surely the mermaids would be checkmated. So after this sequence, we have something that is missed here, because there is a move that is played here. Taking here with the shogun is not the best, just take with the pawn on g5 and then you threat to capture, and after the king runs, then you make a dojo and this is the end of the game. But now, because shogun captures did delay a lot of the game, and this is 10 or 11 moves later, that we get the final checkmate on move 51. So yeah, this was for the game 2. I hope you liked this video. We're going to see each other next time for another encounter of this round 2 of the Matches Neura tournament. See you then. Bye.